Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? Welcome to our show. I am Jojo Sweatt. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, and I am the organizing director for an organization called Common Defense. We are the largest grassroots membership organization of progressive veterans standing up for our communities against the rising tide of racism, hate, and violence. We vow to organize together against those who seek to divide us so they cannot rig our systems and economy for their own gain. You can sign up for membership and training opportunities via our website at www.commondefense/membership. Our members serve their communities as leaders, bridging camaraderie with other veterans and their community members from which they came from, while working on policies and advocating for legislation that benefits us all. You too can have a home at Common Defense. And with me today, to make it less awkward, is my favorite person at Common Defense, my ace, road dog, and partner in organizing crime, because without politics, I don't have anything to organize for. I'd like to welcome Naveed Shah. Naveed, please introduce yourself to our beautiful audience.
Hey, Jojo. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for being here tonight. My name is Naveed Shah. I'm the political director of Common Defense, Army veteran, and I'm based here in Washington, D.C. And tonight we're going to talk to you a little bit about misinformation and disinformation. I know it's a really, it sounds a lot, it's definitely a very interesting topic. Let me just say that. And there's a lot of it going around right now, particularly as it relates to weather, and it might seem, for those who don't know, it might seem weird or boring, or how could weather be misconstrued as misinformation or disinformation. But with the recent uptick in natural disasters that we're seeing, whether it's Hurricane Helene, that just hit 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago, and now Hurricane Milton, which is on the horizon, getting ready to make landfall in Florida. There is a lot of misinformation and disinformation going around, and it really seems like what people are saying and what people are doing is being influenced by what they're reading online from unverified sources, whether that's on Twitter, formerly, the website formerly known as Twitter, or it's on Reddit, or even on Facebook, or any of the other social media platforms like TikTok or Snapchat or whatever else the kids are on these days. They're getting information from sources that are completely unreliable, and I think that's a real problem that we're seeing. And I think one of the big things that we should do, whether for anyone who has a platform, is to make sure that we are providing reliable, concrete, well-sourced information for people to get the help they need, especially when they're facing disasters like this.
Yeah, it's important to recognize that real people are being affected in these tragedies. And the last thing that they actually need to happen in this instance is for it to be politicized, right? And we're seeing that more and more. And folks need access to services and resources during this time. They don't need to have to figure out what's accurate and what's not, right? The only information that should be provided to them is what is factual and accurate. How do you explain some of the information about this disinformation about weather and how it's being circulated, and why you think that message is even capturing any weight behind it?
It's really tough to say why this is happening. Actually, it's hard to pinpoint an exact reason, but there are many of them. Whether it's political reasons, people want their side to be scared so that they support their candidate, or it is, even just people are after making money. There's a profit motive here that people are want to scare people into buying their disaster relief. Whether it's a prepping kit or a protect your family plan, like all types of stuff that scams that are out there. One of the things I've seen is that people, the FEMA has gone in after Hurricane Helene, especially in places like North Carolina and Appalachia that were hit really hard, and provided aid. One of the first things they do is say, here's $750 for you to go get a hotel room, get some food, take care of your family for a few days, so you can get settled, just so you can get your feet back underneath you, and then figure out the rest. And the disinformation that's going on around that is people are saying that that money is taxable, or that money is a loan and the government is going to make you pay it all back. None of that is true. And again, it's much just a lot of fear mongering. So let me back up a step and maybe explain to folks what is FEMA's role, right? Because for many people who have never been in one of these situations, might have never known. I know a lot of people in New Jersey had no idea what FEMA was or what it did after Hurricane Sandy, for example. So it might be the same for people who are facing it now, especially those who are in the mountains of North Carolina and weren't expecting a hurricane to ever affect them. So the Federal Emergency Management Agency is a federal agency within the Homeland Security Department, and its goal is to provide and coordinate disaster relief. It provides disaster preparedness in the first place to help communities prepare for and mitigate the impacts of disasters, including hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, wildfires, right? This includes, providing emergency plans for communities, conducting drills with local first responders, and providing training and education to first responders on the ground who are going to be responding to those things. And also, in the event of a disaster, it does coordinate the response to that disaster. So this can include providing food, water, shelter, and all the essential supplies. It also works with state and local governments to provide effective disaster relief, and make sure that all of the different agencies are coordinating with each other. Another thing that we're seeing in North Carolina is there are so many private citizens, apparently, who have helicopters. I had no idea there were so many helicopters out there. Maybe I should get one. It's a good thing that they're trying to help, but what's sometimes happening is the National Guard or the Coast Guard or the local police have a helicopter in flight, and a local civilian aircraft, which is not coordinated with anybody, is flying into their airspace, and they're being told to turn back. And so people are taking that to say, my friend who was flying his chopper and had supplies was turned away, and they're not letting relief get through. They would love to let relief go through, but they need to coordinate all this with multiple agencies. There was a map that I wish I had right now that showed the number of different flight paths that were going on over North Carolina. There's just so many people all at once.
The last thing you need in a tragedy is adding more chaos to the equation. And that just goes to show you, there's real reasoning behind things that are happening if people just stop to pay attention instead of listening to the rhetoric. Just like you said, the $750 is it in totality, and like, have a nice life, and whatever tragedy you just suffered is going to be eradicated by that amount of money. No, it is to stop the bleeding in that moment, right? And we know that well as veterans, because there's been lots of times that we've been on the chopping block at the end of budgets. I can remember when the GI Bill was transferring from the Montgomery GI Bill to post 9/11 payments, and nobody got paid because it just bogged down the system. And what they had to do was give us all paper checks in person that filled the gap in that immediacy, but it wasn't even taken away from us later on. And so sometimes you just need something right then and there while we get through the bureaucracy. And we know as military members, logistics matters in any occasion. And if your logistics aren't tight, then everything falls apart. And so I'm really thankful that those are really important points that you brought up, because people aren't listening to the whole picture.
Yeah, exactly. And I think especially in moments like this, in a very rare moment where we're in between two known natural disasters one just happened, another one is on the horizon. Literally, it's coming across the Gulf of Mexico towards Florida as we speak. It's really important to get this information out there. I mean, if you are in Florida and you're in a evacuation zone, you need to get out. You got to go. I mean, it's not too late. I don't know. It's almost 8 o'clock on the East Coast here. They said landfall was going to be around 8 o'clock. Maybe it is. Maybe at this point you should hunker down. I don't know. But I was talking to somebody earlier today who, and FEMA had put out and said, if you are in flood zones, I don't know the exact, so don't quote me on this, but it was like, if you're in flood zones A or C, you need to get out. And somebody said, well, I'm in flood zone B, so I'm going to stay. If you were anywhere in any flood zone in the first half of the alphabet, I would have left. I would have gone, right? I wouldn't be sticking around. It seems like people are taking risks here because they don't understand how dire these consequences are. I mean, 15-foot waves coming across the water and over land, over your house, over your car is, I mean, really tough to survive. So I know that we started talking a little bit about what FEMA does. So after the disaster, what FEMA does is, of course, they come in and provide aid, that first level of help that they can. And then after that, they continue to coordinate disaster recovery. Mm-hmm. They help communities rebuild. They provide grants, and they do also provide loans in some cases where appropriate to help people and businesses repair their infrastructure. They also provide further risk assessment and mitigation. So they work to identify and assess potential risks to communities and help them develop strategies to help reduce those risks. This can include like critical infrastructure, improving land use planning. So, for example, after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, they helped rebuild the levees so that the next hurricane wouldn't overcome those levees. Now, again, there's no guarantee about this, especially as these storms are getting worse and worse, but they're doing everything they can. So it's really important to understand that from the public policy perspective, FEMA is doing its job. And if anything, and I don't want to politicize this too much, I know we're not supposed to, but it's Congress's job to provide funds. Yeah. Congress is on vacation. You think, if you think anyone takes a long vacation, Congress is going to be on vacation for at least 4 more weeks, if not 5, I think. They're not coming back anytime soon. So it's really up to them to make sure that FEMA is fully funded and that the money that the people need to rebuild after all this is there for them when they need it.
Yeah, and that goes right into kind of the segue into voting, right? False information about FEMA, why it's important to vote, because who is responsible for funding that organization? Who is responsible for making sure that it has what it needs to be able to operate when these things happen? It's also important that we elect people who are willing to think about the future, right? And what has been happening to our climate and how that has been affecting the way that we live and how we need to think about the way we live for the future in order to survive. Because hurricanes are getting stronger, like you said. I'm from California. As a young girl, I watched the Bay Bridge collapse. I watched everything in my house look and turn into mush. And I just can remember the fear that I had, or jumping in bathtubs. And these things are happening more frequently, right? So what do you have to say about that and Congress's role, and why we need to elect people that have the intelligence, the authority, to really combat these issues and not just think about them in the real-time moment when they happen, because that's generally too late, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The elected officials that we send to Congress, they play a critical role in deciding how much funding FEMA gets. These lawmakers they're the ones who make the decision, right, about how well equipped FEMA will be to respond to natural disasters. They will invest in preparedness programs. They will support long-term recovery efforts. So when people say that politics isn't for me, I'm like, well, politics is about you, whether you like it or not. It's going to be about you. And I think that's, we get into there's a lot of stuff you'll see, especially in a month before the election, about undecided voters. I think the real challenge is uninterested voters. People who think that they don't have time for politics and doesn't matter to them, it's not gonna affect them. There's way more of them than there are of undecided voters or Republicans or Democrats. And I really hope that some of them are watching tonight. And if you know anyone like that, you should talk to them about this too, because your vote directly influences who makes these critical decisions. And by voting for leaders who prioritize, taking care of our communities, providing disaster relief and emergency management, you'll ensure that your communities will be prepared for that. If you vote for leaders who, only care about themselves, well, we'll know at least one person is taken care of after the hurricane. But unfortunately, it won't be you or your family. So, in times like this, it's really important to know that you can count on your elected leaders up and down. It's not just members of Congress; it's your local county, board of supervisors, or your mayor, or your state legislature as well. Everybody up and down the ticket. It's your job as a voter to hold them accountable. It's really crazy if you think about it. As a voter, you only get one vote, but you can vote for multiple people at different levels, whether it's your state, county, or the national level, multiple different people. And then when it comes time, you can, as a voter, can call them and say, hey, I'm a constituent of yours. I voted for you, and I expect you to do the right thing. And believe it or not, that still does hold a lot of power. So I want folks to feel empowered more than anything, that you when it comes to holding these folks accountable who are in office, that's our job, and that's what we do. Common Defense does that really well. What we do is we take veterans who served in the military and got out and want to go back and be leaders in their communities. We train them up. Jojo is a big part of that work. I'll let her talk a little bit about that too. But it's really crucial. If you want to get involved with us, visit commondefense.us and check it out. But Jojo can tell you a little bit more about our training programs.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which side of the political aisle you're on. Everybody should be an engaged voter. I am 100% advocate for that. Obviously, not everybody is going to be aligned with all the things that I would like to see passed in legislation, but I would like to think that for most Americans, we at least have, some similar value sets. And just things about what we want to see in character in our leaders, and morality, and just a care for the community, and why voting is so important, and why you can't say your vote doesn't matter, is just what Naveed had started talking about. If you live anywhere, your roads, the signage, everything that affects your daily lives has been impacted by who has been voted in to take those roles. From your school board to your sheriff, to your local elected leaders, mayors, congressmen, senators, all the way up to the federal level, these people are making decisions about us. And you can see the least involved are the folks that are the most impacted by mis and disinformation. Because if you're not engaged, it's very difficult to try to weed through lots of information coming at you. And so folks tend to follow trend, right? What is trending? And what is trending is not necessarily factual. And so it's important that you're registered to vote, you actively participate in that vote, and you get to know the candidates that are vying for those seats. They get to vote on the budgets that are affecting you. They get to vote on tax increases or decreases. They get to vote on the allocations of aid that go to agencies such as FEMA. And if they don't have the aid that they need to meet the disasters that are coming, this is where things fall apart. And we want to elect leaders that want to enhance and strengthen our government institutions so that they are viable and that they're there for us in those times of need and not disrupted. And I think we can see a stark difference between what happened in preparing, right, for Helene, even though their chaos came in after that, due to a lot of bad and misinformation. But even with Milton coming in Florida, you know, it just, I don't think people are taking things as serious as they need to, because they're basing it on the past and assuming that there's been an improvement. But if you didn't vote for somebody who had a vested interest in that improvement, things might not have improved, you know. And I think even there was fights in New Orleans before Katrina hit about allocating money to the infrastructure and it never passing. And then the aftermath of Katrina, they finally fixed that. So the voters actually have the power to get in front of these things and ensure it. And so I really want to advocate for you, whether you choose Common Defense or another agent of change, to really understand the levels of politics and how you can be more informed and where you can get reliable resources. And so I'm going to ask Naveed about finding and mining the information that is good. So help us understand how to stay away from bad information and what that kind of looks like and what good information looks like and the sources that they come from.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jojo, for that. I mean, when it comes down to it, I know it's tough. There's so much, noise out there. Again, whether or not you're on any number of the social channels, or even if you aren't, and you have friends and family who undoubtedly are, and are telling you, oh, I heard about this and I heard about that. It's really important for you to do more than just a quick Google search. Check your local news station's website, right, about stuff. There might be good information on there, whether it's your local NBC, CBS, even your local Fox News affiliate. The local news is really reliable. A lot of times they'll have information that's really good for the community. From there, check major news outlets. I know a lot of them can get really political, but usually if you check their news section, they will give you unbiased, unvarnished information. So again, if you look around at whether it's CNN or MSNBC or even just NBC News, like the regular news channels are really good. And I think some of the most unbiased and straightforward news outlets like AP or Reuters will put out their information now directly to the public. It used to be they would only give it to other news outlets, but they'll now put it out directly to the public. And then also, if you still have your local newspaper, those can be really good too. Look for reliable sources like that. And then again, look for reliable people as well. There are many different people who will put out claims with absolutely nothing to back it up. Nothing, just to send it, have a thought, send a tweet, and move on. That's it. That's not good information. The best sources of information, even online in those communities, are again usually journalists or reporters or just influencers who can say, I heard about this from X, Y, and Z. It might still not be true. It might still not be accurate, but at the very least, they're giving you the opportunity to go look at that source where they got this information from and come back and make your decision on whether you think it's true or accurate or not. So look for people who source their information, who tell you, I heard about this thing from this source or this person. And even then, if a story seems too far-fetched to be true, it probably is. If you hear from somebody who says that, I don't know how to say that anything without getting too political, but like that space lasers are controlling the weather. Not true. It's not happening. Nobody's controlling the weather. If we could control the weather, it would be
better.
Yeah, it'd be better.
I wouldn't have had to live through 110 days of over 100 degrees in Arizona, hopefully.
Right, exactly. So none of that is true. I think it's really important as you're looking through your Facebook feed or any of your Twitter timelines, don't stay stuck on them for too long. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this. If you are on it for multiple, hours per day, log off. Because as you go deeper down the rabbit hole, it just gets worse and worse.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like to really focus in on my sources, like how close are they to what is happening, right? And something that we teach at Common Defense, right, is if you're going to speak about something, the power is behind the I statement, my personal experience. So it's like, I remember the mis and disinformation of COVID. It was always like, my friend has a friend who has a friend who's a nurse. What? I don't want to hear from that. I want to hear from the nurse. Go bring me the nurse and put the nurse in front of me. And so it's important to understand like who those sources are that you're hearing from. There's a lot of people on my Facebook who live on the West Coast by nature of me being a West Coast person. And so we don't deal with the same kind of environmental tragedies that y'all deal with in the East or the Southeast. And it surprises me how much advice is coming from the West Coast of the world. And I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about because we don't even have these experiences, right? Just like nobody in Florida is going to tell us how we should experience wildfires. And so considering the source is so important, and not to participate, in rhetoric with folks who don't have any expertise in things. And that's how what is being perpetuated is rumor, or what you hear through the telephone, as we used to say when we were kids, because the last person's message translated to something far-fetched from what was first said. And so in closing, I want us to really talk about, really advocate for what you can do to be proactive instead of reactive, right? We should not be a reactive society. We should be proactive. We should take care of our fellow Americans in their time of need. We shouldn't make light of this, and we shouldn't bog this tragedy with bad information. We should just be ready to help. So, what are some parting words that you want to give, Naveed, really to kind of hone in on that, right? Because it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think at times like this, it's really easy to get caught up in politics or the news cycle or any number of other things. Let's get refocused on our communities, taking care of yourself, taking care of your neighbor. That's what's most important right now. If you are in the path of Hurricane Milton that's hitting tonight, if you were in the path of Hurricane Helene, not only are our thoughts with you, but I know that veterans across the country are coordinating relief efforts and trying to help. And I think that's what we all should be doing, and trying to help in any way we can. If you are out there right now and you're scared, you're worried about what's going to happen to you or your home, your family, our thoughts are with you, of course, and we want to make sure that you are just getting the information that you need to survive this. I think it's crucial at times like this for those of us who are not in the path of these storms to, number one, be thankful you're not. I know I am. And number two, be there for your friends, your family, your neighbors who are going to be in the way. And number three, tomorrow, after the storm has passed, you've got to think about what the future is going to look like. Election day is 28 days away now, or 26, 27. And it's going to be really important for you to get out there and cast your ballot.
Yeah, our votes matter.
Yeah, and visit commondefense.us to learn more. Thanks.
Thanks, Naveed.